Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. I have been abandoning you. I apologize, but we are back here in Capture One. This is the new version. There's a couple new things in here that I haven't fully wrapped my head around yet, but we're gonna do this. We're gonna get in here and do a live edit. Try to make this really quick for you. What I'm hoping to do with the channel is give you lots of really short, valuable information. So I hope you enjoy this edit today. This is AnnaSophia. I will link her Instagram in the description below. We are going to enhance this puppy. We are going to make it look like go from this to this. So let's get started here. So the first thing I generally like to do is get in there and make sure we get the white balance correct. So initial impressions, this is slightly underexposed, which is good. Shadows are a little easier to recover than highlights. So we're gonna go in here and we are going to adjust our white balance. We're gonna warm this up just a little bit. It's cool it off. Her hair, in general, it's looking a little yellowy here in some of these kind of concrete areas. So we're gonna just pull a little bit of that warmth out. There we go, just small adjustments. Most photo editing is a lot of small adjustments, and that looks the best in my opinion. We're gonna bring this tint. It's looking a little green here in her hair. You can see there's sort of a greenish tint going on. I don't love that, so we're gonna just put our cursor in here and just push the up and down arrows. We're gonna go up to get more of towards the pink side. And this is so subtle, it's probably really hard to see, but I think that is about right. So they also added this before and after slider, which is amazing. I love that. So as you can see, we're going from this to this. See, this is a lot warmer and more human looking. And this is has like a green cast to it. So I'm trying to get rid of that green haze. All right, now that we have that in place, we're gonna go ahead and go to the levels. This is probably one of my favorite things to both add a little contrast and sort of like lift the photo. Before we adjust too much else, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the whites. As you can see, all the information right now is existing in these shadows, which you can tell there's tons of dark spots. Not a whole lot of highlights. I think right here on her face is where we're gonna start noticing that get blown out first as we pull this in. So we're gonna go ahead and just pull that up until we notice her face starting to lose some data. Her hair right here is right on the edge. It's pretty close to losing a little data. But we can actually get to the point where it does lose a little bit because we can recover it. And I'm gonna stop there because that's about right. And this is where we recover it right here in the high dynamic range sliders. We're gonna go ahead and pull that down. That's the advantage of shooting raw. You have so much data to work with and to recover later. We're also gonna lift the shadows just a hair. Just brighten things up. And just even with these small changes, look how much better that looks. Sweet, right? All right, so we're going to get into some of the nitty gritty of the skin here. We're gonna go ahead and zoom in and hit up this healing mask. And we're just gonna hit some of these blemishes with it. We're gonna change the brush size a little bit here. This hardness, we're gonna leave about there. Again, don't get too hung up on the actual numbers that I'm using because those are gonna vary so much. There's so many different photos, variables like lighting and the lenses, and so many things go into the photo. So your numbers mean nothing in context to this. They're gonna be relative to your photo. So we're gonna go ahead and start hitting some of these areas that we can see little blemishes and stuff like that. Luckily, there's not very much because her skin is really smooth and great looking. So we're just gonna be hitting some of these. Sometimes there's a process you can go do in Photoshop called frequency separation. I am not gonna get into that on this video. For most things I've found for just posting to Instagram, it just feels like it's almost a waste to do that. You don't really get the resolution or noticeability in Instagram to notice that level of detail. So most of the time I don't bother anymore doing that. It feels like a waste of time. But if it was something I was going to print out or do for a print piece, like in a magazine or something, I obviously would do that. So All right, there we go. So face blemishes, if you notice, like if you just pay attention to little marks, this is before and this is after. So already looking better and better. All right, now we're gonna create a new layer and we're gonna hit up the eyes. There's a couple little things, remove that. A couple of things I like to do to the eyes. I like to brighten the eyes overall, like the overall socket, and then get in and brighten up and enhance the color part of the eye. So we're gonna go to these new style brushes, which is super useful. We're gonna right click dodge and create a new layer. You can see we got a new layer going on. But we're gonna go to our brush tool. We're gonna increase the size of this puppy and soften it. Whoa, the mouse is freaking out. Soften the brush a little bit, bring the opacity down and the size way up. So we're gonna sort of cover the entire eye socket with this mask. So we're gonna go ahead and click and just draw little masks on the eyes. I'm gonna overdo it because I can drop the opacity right here of this whole layer. But you can really see this kind of reddening that's going on. I'm gonna toggle it on and off so you can see it. See that? So that's sort of like an overall, and we'll go ahead and rename this eyes overall. And we're gonna just pull the exposure up on that. We're gonna just brighten the whole eye area. Now, it's really important not to get carried away with this because you can be like, oh, look how good that looks. I'm gonna go nuts. And then it just looks like this. It looks like a little inhuman. Don't ruin your photos like that, please, I beg you. So we're just gonna brighten it overall just a little. And even that's too much, I think. So we can go ahead and drop the opacity of the whole layer to about 50%. Maybe even a little less. And then we'll just toggle it on and off and see what we've done. See, there we go. That's just a nice subtle just lift to that whole area. Just pulls up some of those shadows, adds some of that detail back in. We'll go in real close and see what we did here. See, there's without and with. So you can see in this area, we're adding a lot of shadows, or we're lifting some of those shadows and getting some of that brightness back in the eyes, like that. All right, so now we're gonna do another one of those, another brighten. And this is just gonna be called eye color. So we're just gonna enhance the color part of her eye. So one thing to keep in mind is when light comes into your eye, I see a lot of people, and I'll even just do this quick just to annoy everyone. I've seen people do this to eyes, where they kind of like just color in the entire eye, and then they try to enhance it by doing this kind of stuff. I mean, that looks crazy. Like it looks like she's a demon or something. So let's not do that. So we're going to go ahead and erase this mask because that looks nutty. I do not want that. There we go. We're going to get rid of that crazy mask. And we're going to draw a reasonable mask. So what you want to do is we want to just enhance what's already there, right? So when light comes into an eye, it doesn't enhance the entire eye. See, the light comes in here, and then it's going to brighten the opposite side of where the light comes in. See, the light's coming in here. This is like an overpass. Light comes in here, so it's going to brighten this side, and you can see it did. It's brighter on this side of the eye than it is on the other. So what we're going to do is get a brush here. We're going to put our opacity low and our flow pretty low. We're going to go ahead and just brush in a little bit of this, just this side of the eye, to kind of do an enhancing of that side. And then same with this one. We're just going to kind of enhance what's already there. We're not going to try to recreate the wheel or do any tricks that weren't already there. So, all right, so we have done that, and drop the exposure just a little. And then we're gonna just toggle it on and off and see how natural it looks. So I like to toggle it on and off close. That looks a little heavy to me. It looks a little exaggerated. But when we back up, it's not as bad, but it's still a little heavy. So I'm just gonna drop the opacity of the whole layer to about half. We're just doing small enhancements, and I think when you do that, you get a much more natural look. So, all right, we are looking like we are in pretty good shape, I think. One thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is crop this to get it a little bit more in proportion. There's a lot of headroom up here, so I'm gonna pull that in. Maybe pull a little bit of space off this, and I'm always looking at these grid lines to get her right in the center. If it was a horizontal shot, I'd probably get her in the third, like in those third markers, but for now, I think I want to zoom in on her just a hair there. And that is looking pretty good. So for before and after, here we go. We got rid of that green haze. We made it pop. Her eyes are looking popped. It is looking good. I'll zoom in and show you a zoomed in version of that. So there is before and after. Look how much more details in her eyes. So in future videos, I'm going to show you some additional things that I do to the eyes. Namely, I kind of go to this burn and I create a new layer, and then I just trace her eyeliner and her eyelashes and just darken them just a little. I feel like that really adds an additional pop to the eyes. For now, we're just going to keep this pretty quick and simple, just so this video isn't 10 hours long. All right, as a final thing, I think we're pretty much there. I really am happy with the way this is looking so far. We'll go back to our background layer. There we go. Sometimes on this layers area, I like changing this to like a 1 or a 2. I feel like the shadows really pop when you do that. It's kind of a nice little addition. I may just lift the shadows even more now that I darkened them. Everything's sort of about trade-offs with all of this. It's like you darken one area and then you gotta lighten another. So I'll bring that up to about 10. Bring the highlights down a little more to even it out. And I think that is looking pretty good. So one thing I like to do to some photos, this background's a little drab. Look at a beer can back here, and it's looking a little boring. So sometimes I like to add just a touch of blue into the shadows, and it shifts, instead of the shadows being black, it shifts them to a color. So you can shift them to red to get a vintage look like that, which actually looks pretty good. But for this one, I'm gonna shift them to blue just a hair. And even just to 3 there, you can see these shadows already turned kind of blue. If you hold Option, you can see, if you're just looking at just the background, see they went from like a kind of a drab boring to just a blue tint. And it makes her actually pop even more. I may actually just shift the photo back over to the warmer side just a little. Maybe that's too much. Just to make her pop even more. So there we go. I think that is looking pretty good. So just as a note, when you add contrast to a photo, you are also adding saturation to the colors. So as you notice, these colors are a lot brighter than they were when we started, especially because of the lift. But just the brightness of this was sort of semi-muted, but now they're actually popping quite a bit. So sometimes when you add contrast, well, all the time when you add contrast, you also are saturating your colors. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down a couple of points to compensate for that. Not too much. I don't want to make the photo look, washed out, or I'm not going for that too much of a vintage look, but I'm just going to bring that down just a little. And I think we are looking pretty good. We've got our blue, our levels. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to see make sure we got all these little details. If we really wanted to get detailed, we could clean up some of these extra hairs in Photoshop, or even in Capture One, because Capture One has added a lot of tools to make it so you can do almost everything in Capture One. But for a high-level edit, I think that was a success. This is before, and this is after. I think you can see it's got a lot more pop. Her eyes are really sharp and engaged, and look at the sharpness on this. This is shot with the Sony a7 III and the 55mm Zeiss, so it's crazy in focus. That left eye is a little bit out, but her head was angled, so that's gonna happen at shallow depths of field. So there we go. I hope you guys enjoyed this today. Looking to add just lots of small videos to give you guys value. I hope you found some value in it. And until next time, peace.